Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 91 of Zion's Finest. This is Kenny Brown, and I am joined by my brother, Sammy K.
Hello, hello.
We also have a very special guest. Mike Plummer from AMG is joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
This is going to be a really awesome conversation. What we've got is Plummer has joined us to talk about the balance patch, the update, and we've also got a general retinue of questions with respect to design. Plummer, before we start the questions, do you want to just give a short introduction, tell everyone what it is that you do at AMG?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, like they said, my name is Michael Plummer. I am the game development manager at Atomic Mass Games. What that means is that I get to help lead the wonderful group of developers that we have to create all of the awesome games that we make for people to enjoy and play. And I am also the lead developer on Star Wars Shatterpoint.
And I also hear you are a huge Rebel stan. Is that true?
Yeah, ever since birth, pretty much. Growing up, we would watch Star Wars every 4th of July, and so it was kind of ingrained in me very, very early on that Rebel scum is who you want to be, and I'm kind of stuck with it.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate
I love
that.
it. Let's jump right in. So this is our first major update for Shatterpoint. And we've seen updates in MCP before. It's often brought up as a comparison to Shatterpoint. So how much do you use MCP's successes and failures when designing for Shatterpoint?
That's an interesting question. I think the one thing that is kind of universal at Atomic Mass Games is that we're a very collaborative studio. We all touch all of the games. While I am the lead on Shatterpoint for sure, but every single developer at the company works on Shatterpoint. We all play test. We all talk about the ideas. We all, come together. Sometimes someone will come in and be like, "Hey, I came up with a game mode, and let's talk about it." And then we'll go through it and we'll play with it. And so the kind of like the victories of one game line and the pitfalls that they fall into, like they naturally kind of feed the conversations around the other ones, right? Because if you know that you've done something and it's gone poorly in the past on one game line, you probably don't want to do that same thing over here. So that kind of leads into our discussion about this update. Like one thing that we did with MCP back in the day is we waited a little while before we did these kind of updates, and we did that again here. And we learned from the first time that you kind of need to let things sit a little bit, because especially with the initial releasings for a game. So like when you make your game for the first time, when we made Shatterpoint, right? So we were working on the core set, and then we were working on several of the things that would come out for months afterwards, because you kind of know what you're going to make in that time frame, especially, and you know like how long you need to make it go out over, but you have all the ideas and you need it all to work together, so you're working on it all in tandem at the same time. So like, if your core set comes out, you may have already worked on the thing that comes out a year afterwards and you made them at the same time, but you don't want to change things before the rest of all of that comes out. So like if core set comes out and you're like, oh, we messed something up, like, or something isn't quite performing as well as the other things, and you know that something's coming a year down the road that's going to maybe work well with it, or is going to kind of like shift the meta. Maybe it's a new mission, maybe it's something else. So you kind of have to wait for everything to hit the pool, right? Like everybody's got to be in the pool before you can see if you need to like quarantine people out to make sure there's room to swim. And so we learned that like you need to wait a little bit, and so we followed suit. And so like we definitely take the lessons that we've learned from all of the other games that we work on and try and apply them across, but they are also at the same time like very different beasts each game, and so there are different strategies to each one in how you work on them and what you do.
That's super interesting. I love hearing about your guys' design insights. I have just continuing on kind of like the general your general thoughts behind this design when you were deciding what to update in the balance and changes. How closely do you pay attention to events, and do you differentiate between like smaller events and larger ones?
So we try and take a very holistic look at the game, because there's all kinds of different people that play the game, and there's different ways to play the game, and they're all great, right? Like playing in tournaments is awesome, playing on your kitchen table is awesome, playing at your game store every week is great. Like there's no wrong way to play games. Like you should be going out having fun and doing the thing that you like. And so, of course, we look at the big tournament numbers because big tournaments are always exciting. And when you get in the Discords or go on the Facebook groups, people are always talking about like Adepticon and LVO and grand tournaments and this and that. And you go on Longshanks and all those numbers in there. I'm like, that's where most of the big discussion happens. But you can also find some really interesting nuggets of information if you go and you look at like what people are talking about their small 8-person tournament that they played over the weekend and who was playing in that and what did people play a lot of, et cetera, et cetera. Or just watching like individual groups. You know, I'm in all the various different podcast Discords and I lurk in there and I like to read what people are saying about the game. And I'm in like the various communities and all that. And, you can see what people are saying and where people are having the same experience. Like some people are saying like these characters are overperforming and that's happening across all these groups, or maybe these characters aren't seeing play by the really competitive people, but when you're looking at people who are playing games at home, they're having a fantastic time playing the characters, and like that is still okay, right? Just because something is not performing in like high level tournaments doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's not the best. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be something that is the best. And when you're talking about competitive players, especially, like even if the best is 2% better, they're going to play that 2%, right? Because why wouldn't you? You're trying to win games. Like that's kind of the goal of that style of play. But it doesn't mean that something else can't exist, that there can't be something that's wacky and zany and unreliable, and that is bad. It's just different. And if someone enjoys playing that, it has a place. So we try and look at like all the different ways that you can play the game and understand that like when we're making something or updating something, we're updating it we're updating it for all players, but we also need to think about like updating it for the players that like that thing and enjoy that thing, and also for all players at the same time. So like not everything has to be amazing from a competitive standpoint, right?
Yeah. That's something that we actually talk about a lot in terms of characters. I mean, Sam's used this comparison with things like League of Legends or Dota, where it's like there are heroes or units that are really good for beginner players and really fun and really enjoyable to play. And there are also this suite of characters or units that are really good in the hands of skilled players. And like it's totally fine to have a little bit of differentiation where it is the case that higher, like certain units that might not do very well at beginner level play can really excel at high level competitive play, and vice versa. Like that's a totally fine place for the game to be. Not everything needs to be the high level competitive best unit in the game.
Yeah, and I think that the game is more interesting in that regard. Like if you have things that play differently, you have things that match different play styles. I mean, like it can be very difficult to play, but also be very satisfying when you get a win with something. And that is great. It's great that exists. And you may not play it every game, and you may not suggest that to someone that's just getting into it. But if someone really likes playing, Mother Talzin, who's a very control focused, like kind of like if you play your first game with Mother Talzin, you're not necessarily going to win that game because you need to know a lot about board control and like where you want to put their characters to get them, away from points and in places where you can take advantage of that with your units that haven't activated yet. Like there's a lot you got to think about, but that doesn't mean she's a bad character or needs to be changed to be simpler. Like it just means that this is what Mother Talzin does.
Yeah, that's a really great comparison. We thought about that a lot with last year's Adepticon when Mama did not do very well in Swiss, but was everywhere at the top table because she's a hard figure to play, and that's a great place for units to be. That brings up something that we think about a lot. So with Shatterpoint, you think about this range of skill categories or tools that factions have or that units have. So these are things like out of activation, movement abilities, revenge triggers, diceless displacement, like high levels of damage, consistency, et cetera, et cetera. Is it the case? So these, we when we're talking about list building, one of the things that we do is we think, does this list have out of activation movement? Does it have diceless displacement or ways to deal with these threats? How does AMG think that every faction needs to have I'm just going to describe it as kind of an equal blend of these kind of abilities? Like how does AMG approach something like that to say, we're going to give Rebels lots of really good revenge triggers and Republic's going to have lots of good diceless displacement? Like, how do you guys think about that?
Sure. Yeah. I think there's lots of ways to go about that, and kind of the philosophy for myself, and I can only speak for myself because everybody that makes things at AMG makes things differently. Like we all kind of approach dev from different directions. So like if you like Pagani, for example, he very much is a mechanics forward developer. He wants
Mhm.
to think about like, what is this mechanically going to do on the table? How is it going to do that? And how is that mechanic going to be interesting? Like he's really into the knobs and the levers that you turn while you're playing the game, if that makes sense, like how you
Yeah.
drive the car.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in like what the car looks like while it's driving. Like I want to know what
Yeah.
the paint job looks like. I'm very much a flavor fluff forward dev. I think about like
Yeah.
what does this character do in the movie and the show, and like
Yeah.
how do we make sure that that gets onto the table. So like there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that, and so you can also kind of say yeah, you want to have all these abilities in every grouping. Like every tag should have
Yeah.
out of activation movements and should have diceless displacements and this and that. Like somewhere in there, you should have access to them. Um, and I don't actually necessarily agree with that 100%
Yeah.
myself. So
Yeah.
number one, there's so little restriction in how you build a squad in Shatterpoint that if you want to be picking out mechanically, like I want a diceless displacement, I want things that are going to move people, I want XYZ,
Yeah.
you can build your list in such a way that you can fit those things in, I think, a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
I really subscribe to the idea of identities. So, I mean, Shatterpoint doesn't have factions, but I often say like faction identity.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
if you think about the various like tag groupings inside of Shatterpoint, there are, you know, like the Galactic Republic, the clones, they do a lot with hunker tokens, right? So like
Yeah.
hunker tokens are a theme for clone troopers, right? And the Galactic Empire units, they hurt themselves to do things. They get bonuses, or they like do an ability that does something cool, but then they take some damage, and that is a theme in the Galactic Empire.
Yeah.
And if you take those themes and like if the theme of one faction is out of activation movements, like they have a lot of access to this, like Ewoks are very fast in general,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you put those throughout everything equally, I think you end up with this bit of a homogenization
Yeah.
where everything kind of feels the same. And then at
Yep.
that point, does it really matter that you're playing Darth Vader if Darth Vader feels like some other character? And that, to
Yeah.
me, that doesn't feel great. I actually, from my perspective, I like the kind of bumps in the road that you run into when the miniatures that you're playing, the stuff that you like to play, doesn't have an ability that someone else has, and you need to find a way to get the same benefit, to get the same result without that tool. To me,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Like, how do you get the round peg to fit in the square hole?
Yeah, the thing about that is an excellent observation, and because you do not want homogeneity, like that just makes for boring games. And there's this fine line where it's like factions need to have enough in order to compete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they need to have enough either out of activation movement, some kind of blend of these skills that is unique. So like Rebels have tons of revenge triggers, right? They've got Kanan, they've got Cassian, they've got Princess Leia, they've got Han, right? They have way more than any other faction, and that's obviously a core part of their identity. And it's honestly like Empire, I don't think Empire has any revenge triggers, right? Which is thematic. It's kind of cool that Rebels are gunning you down when you kill their friends, whereas Empire's like, we're hurting ourselves in order to like exert this oppressive presence on the table. I love that. I think it's an interesting thing to think about it, and I know you guys walk a careful line with this to make sure that the factions have what they need in order to survive, right? In order to thrive in the competitive meta.
It's a fine line, right? Like
Yeah.
It can be very sink or swim whether or not your unit can move another miniature or not.
Yeah.
Because that's the make or break between do you play this unit or not. And if this unit cannot move another miniature, it better do something else, and it better do it really well, because you need to be able to control the board.
Yeah. That brings up a question that I have, which is, who do you think is, if I were to ask you what the baseline unit is in the game, like who do you think it is that, not I'm going to say represents perfect balance, but what I really mean is on the curve, like right there in the middle of the curve that we kind of, so for those of people who remember X-Wing, when X-Wing was originally released, TIE fighters and X-Wings were meant to represent kind of the ideal, balance point on the curve. And whether or not they succeeded with that doesn't matter, but like that's a question. I have my own answer, but I'm interested in what you think, Plummer. Like, who do you think of as that baseline unit?
You kind of got me here, because when I read the question, when you emailed it to me, it said, who represents perfect balance? And I was going to go into this whole thing about perfect balance and how it can't exist. And now I have to actually answer the question because you brought up the curve.
Yeah.
Let's see, who is my benchmark? I think you have to have different benchmarks with a game like Shatterpoint. I think that there's like kind of a benchmark for supports. There's a benchmark for there's a benchmark for secondaries, and there's like a benchmark for primaries, right?
Yeah.
And if I had to pick one, which I don't, but
Yes.
but I'll humor y'all. I think all right, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I don't think
Okay.
it's I don't think it's one, but I think that if you look at the like the Mandalorian supports inside of the
Yes.
core set,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think that they're like kind of two sides of a coin.
Yep.
In that the super commandos are very aggressive and they're very like damage focused, and then the clan cries, they're a little more strategic, tactical,
Yes.
movement oriented, things like that.
Yep.
But they have they have solid defense expertise because they're 4-cost units and they're built to be defensive, and then their attack expertises are good, but they're not like phenomenal, blow it out of the water, but they're consistent, right?
Yeah.
And then those units are like, to me, I think that represents like a pretty solid 4-point cost baseline unit. And if you make their defense worse, their offense can be better, and depending what the abilities are and this and that. But like, I think those units have good tools and are pretty good like vanilla-ish units, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
So that would
Yeah.
be my answer there. And then
Yeah.
if I was gonna say like a benchmark secondary, Rex. I think
Oh,
Rex
man.
is.
Yeah.
I think if
Yeah.
we look at Rex, and normally I don't know, it's like a tie between Rex and Bo-Katan. I think they're both like really good,
Yeah.
but I think that Rex edges out Bo-Katan for me as far as like being the benchmark, because he is a little more well-rounded and she's a little more support focused than he is.
Yeah.
And then for us, for a primary, I don't think that there is a benchmark for a primary,
Yeah. It's too
because
hard.
Yeah.
you can't make a primary off of a template. They have to feel like the character, because there's so much. I think people talk a lot about how the secondary is the glue of the squad, because I think the secondary is kind of what ties the support to the primary. And the primary can go do its own thing, but your secondary needs to be able to make everything else work, is the way a lot
Yeah.
of people think about it. I think that when
Yeah.
we make primaries, like they have to be unique, and there can't really be one that you say like this is the benchmark. So I know that that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with it.
No, I mean, like for
Ma-
me, I could not have answered the question with respect to primaries. I was more thinking with supports, and Mando's Clan Kreese, I think, is and has been for me the perfect baseline unit for all the reasons you thought about. And if I would have had to say secondaries, I definitely would have said Rex. And I think it's kind
Yeah.
of remarkable that they were in the core box, because we talk about them always as just like excellent. I mean, Clan Kreese are obviously, with the Mando package, still, in my opinion, one of the most meta relevant characters. And honestly, that was without any changes, except with the exception of maybe armor. And she just adds a lot to that team. But they just always strike me as like that's exactly what we want to be. So
I think that it really shows like kind of how much those early designs were nailed, in that there's kind of this hidden consensus that I didn't really know about, that those really are the baseline, like Clan
Yeah.
Kreese, Super Commandos, Rex. They kind of just like hit that, and that how unique primaries feel is a lot of like the joy of the exploration of the game for me.
totally.
And just to like talk a little bit more about this, I think that's kind of been our goal and our North Star throughout. Like, one thing that always feels really good to hear when we're like doing playtests and we have new stuff in playtest is when people come in and they say like, oh yeah, I played Mace Windu against this, and it still felt like I had a chance. That was great. So it doesn't feel like this is, completely over. I think that's great. The core box is where the game starts. You buy a core
Yeah.
box and you have all this stuff and you can play all these units. And we never want it to feel like those are, not forever friends. Like they should be something that you can go back to and play, or like let your friends play them against your army and feel like they have a chance and they're going to have a good game.
Well,
Yeah.
they definitely have that with the update. So
I kind of talking a little bit about that core set and how things have changed from there. In the core set, everyone was the same era, and we saw a lot of different tags that didn't necessarily have mechanical connection. How has tag synergies and era design changed at all since that core set, if it has?
I think it stayed pretty consistent. So the idea behind the tag system, we always knew that we wanted Shatterpoint to be pretty open as far as squad building. We wanted people to be able to build their dream team and play the characters that they love the most, and get them on the table, push them around, and have a good time. Right? It's the most
Yeah.
important part of the game, is that you can have fun playing your favorite Star Wars characters and making pew pew noises and saying lines from the movies.
Yeah.
So the tag system has always been built in such a way that the game doesn't say no, It just says
Mm,
thanks for playing, in that like you're not punished for not playing all Galactic Rebellion stuff, but if you do play Rebel Alliance, like if you play all Rebel Alliance stuff, you get a little bacon. If you
yeah.
play all Galactic Republic stuff, you get a little bacon because all your stuff works together. But if you want to pick and choose and play your favorite, or like if you want to just slap your favorite characters together, you can. Or if you want to like pick and choose very carefully to have like different like little pods within your list, like, oh, these two do this with this tag and these two do this with this tag, like you can do that, and that's great, and that's what we've always wanted. We've wanted tags to be a way that you build your list to play the way that you want to play, and so that you can focus on the aspects that you want to focus on. And there are definitely some early tags that like you don't see a lot of, like Night Owl and things like that. And some of those are just kind of like fluff to
Yeah.
remind you like this is
Yeah.
who these people are. And also just like you never know what's going to come down the line, right? Like we
Yeah.
never know what we're going to make, and maybe we decide to use that tag for something and make something awesome out of it. Like we feel like it's better to have the option to do something cool later than to not have the option to do something cool later. And that's why some of
100%.
those exist in there.
That's cool. That's very cool. What unit has been like? What unit was the biggest surprise for you or AMG in terms of like what you expected it to be versus how it actually ended up working? And that can be either pro or con. Either something way blew past your expectations, or something did not meet what you thought were your expectations.
Well, that's easy for me. It's Asajj Ventress. And I say this on like every podcast I go on, but I've always kind of thought that Asajj is a little bit undervalued and underplayed. And when the game was coming out, we were playing Asajj. I was like, this is the character. Asajj is it. She's got the push. She goes anywhere she wants. She's so fast. All these things, and then people just don't play her.
Yeah.
Which was shocking to me, and I understand it more now, like as I see kind of the way that the meta has shaped and shifted. It's when you're making a game, like you kind of have your idea of how it's going to be played and what it's all about, and then you put that game out, and a couple thousand other people start playing it, and you realize, oh no, people play this very differently than we did.
Sure.
And so I think that Asajj was kind of the big surprise for me, that I was like, oh, that didn't quite go the way that I thought it was going to.
Good answer.
Yeah. That's a super interesting answer. And it kind of ties into our next question too. Wanted to talk a bit about stance cards, and Asajj got a bit of an update to her stance cards. So what factors do you consider when you're designing a stance card? Is it
That's a good
straight from
question.
scratch, or from do you have a base template that you start with? Like, how
So
does that work?
it depends, honestly. So like most of the time it's from scratch. Like we don't start with anything and be like, it'll just be this. But sometimes you look at something and you're like, oh, we're making snowtroopers. We already made stormtroopers. Those can be
Yeah.
similar. Those can be the same shape, and we can change some of the things around on them so that they have different effects when they attack, but it makes sense thematically for them to be the same. And like Luke Skywalker, I knew when I was making the stance card for Luke Skywalker, I wanted to do this like nerd pushes his glasses up thing where like he's going to have one shape like Anakin, and then you flip it over, it's going to be the same shape as one of Padme's, and they're going to have similar names. And like that was just something that I wanted to do to make like both his parents are on the card, right?
Yeah.
And then other times it could just be like, we want to make a new stance and it's got to look cool. We want to make sure that there's lots of options. We want this character. Like sometimes you're making a stance card and you're like, okay, well, this character should always have an option of where they go. They should have no straight lines. There should always be like a branch where they can choose, right? Because of the theme of the character. And then other times you just know like, well, this needs to do a lot of damage. It really depends on like what the character is, who the character is, and kind of what our goal is for it. So, we kind of know like how many damage things are allowed to do before it gets ridiculous. And we kind of have an idea of, we want to make sure that they have shoves or conditions or XYZ within X number of results based on their expertise. Like there's this whole kind of equation that goes into it, and it's muddy and it's not precise or perfect. So I guess it's art at that point because there's no perfect way to know how to do it, and there's no perfect way to know that you're going to get it right. But we definitely just start from either an idea or a concept. Sometimes we start from an existing stance card, but it always just comes down to like, who is this character? What do they do? And what should their damage tree look like? What abilities should they do? Like when they attack, what makes them feel right?
brings up the next question, which is with respect to breakpoints on stance
Mhm.
cards. So one of the things we always talk about is, do you have a shove, in the first two steps, right? And
Mhm.
because a shove on the first two steps is just one of the indications that you are very consistently able to do the thing that you need to do, which is, move a unit so that you can take a point. I mean, obviously, we know that not all units have a shove on two. Some units have two shoves on two. Like Clan Crazy is a great example. Like one of the reasons why I think they're so amazing is that they have the option to shove twice on their first two steps.
Mhm.
Is that? I mean, how do you think about that in terms of, not having a shove till 3 or not having any shoves at all? Like, for example, with Savage or Clone Commandos or ISFs, we traditionally say that's bad for these guys because that means that they're not able to do this core component of the game in terms of being able to move people without wounding them. But do you guys, I mean, do you approach that differently? Do you think about that differently? Like, how do you guys think about that?
It kind of goes along the same lines of what we were talking about before with homogenization. Like
Yeah,
if you establish that having a shove within 2 results is what makes a unit good, and you want all the
yeah,
units in the game to be good, and you give them all a shove within the first 2 results,
yeah,
doesn't matter what you're playing anymore.
yeah. Great point.
Um,
Yeah.
and to me, the answer is kind of like, I don't know. Does it?
Yeah,
Maybe. But also, you can't just do the same thing on every single unit. You can't make them all, have a tactic that moves themselves and another person and then give them a hunker token. And then they have another active that gives a 5 dice attack to someone else. Like
yeah,
if you do that, all the units are great and that's fun and all, but they all do the same thing.
yeah,
So it's tough because yeah, we definitely know that we want to make sure that we have a shove or a jump or something important within X number of results from the beginning of their tree, and that could vary based on how many results we expect them to get on a roll. Because if
yeah,
we give someone a really crazy expertise where they get 2 crits on, one result, let's say they get 2 crits on one result,
yeah,
well now that shove really only needs to be in the first 3 results, and it's still
yeah.
pretty good, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of different things that feed into it, and it's hard to have a cut and dry of this is what makes a unit good, so they all have to do this. We have some I want to say some slow soft, because they're not hard fast rules about what is good. Like
Yeah,
we know what's good. We know it's good when you have a shove in two. We know that it's good when you move other people. Like we know all these things. And sometimes if we're making something and they don't have those and we're like, this is falling flat. Why is this falling flat? What's going on? It's like baking and you didn't add vanilla. So you
yeah,
need to take the vanilla down and let them move someone else. And now all of a sudden they're great and they do awesome stuff because they do all this weird stuff, and then they do the one thing that the character needs to do to function inside of the game.
yeah,
And then other times you're like, oh wow, this character doesn't move anyone else. They don't have shoves on their tree at all, but all their other stuff is so crazy. I just made a flourless cake and it's
yeah,
delicious. And no
yeah,
one would recognize it, but they're still gonna love it. And it's
yeah,
okay to have a flourless cake. But most of the time we're making muffins. We're making
yeah,
cupcakes. But
yeah,
occasionally we have this one weirdo. But it's
yeah.
still
Well, I mean,
delicious.
one example of that is Cassian is a really interesting example of a unit who. So Cassian does have a way to move another rebel or
Mhm.
another unit, but it costs a force, and he only has two. But Cassian, that is paired with this crazy identity and all these other things that I can. You look at it, and you're like, Cassian gets dinged. He doesn't have free, out of activation movement. But you're like, well, he's got all these other things that just come out in a really, really interesting blend. So
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. So I use a lot of food metaphors. I get made fun of a lot around the
I love
office,
it.
but it's kind of like cookies, right?
yeah,
That chocolate chip cookies are good. Chocolate chip
yeah,
cookies are great no matter what. And then you're going to see cinnamon chip cookies. And you're like, I know I like chip cookies, but cinnamon chip, that sounds weird. And then you try it and it's great. But it's never anything you would have thought of making. It's never anything
yeah,
you would have been like, hey, you should bring cinnamon chip cookies to the party. But they're awesome. They're great. And so we have to have some of those in there. And you
yeah,
have to give people the opportunity to try something new. And again, like I was talking about, some people have different play styles and want to do something different. Not everyone wants to do the same thing. So as long as there's other options in there and they're interesting and they're exciting, it's great. But we do definitely try to not be like, well, this is kind of a dull milk toast guy that also doesn't move anyone and doesn't have shoves. That's
yeah.
that's not going to work.
Kind of jumping to a new subject here, talking about missions. What have you learned about the way a mission design impacts the balance of a unit and how a unit feels on the table?
Uh, I think we've kind of learned that varied missions is good, and that the
Yeah.
missions can really they can really shape the way that you want to build your squad and your strike team in big ways. Whether we want to spread the objectives out or have them really like tight on the table, obviously is going to make different things valuable. Uh, it's missions are tough. Like
Yeah.
missions and scenarios when you're making games, they're the hardest thing to make, because there are hard fast rules to how they work, because the games games need to have a winner and a loser. I guess they don't have
Yeah.
to, but okay, our game has a winner and a loser, and we have
Yeah.
established that you win the game when you win two struggles, and that you win a struggle by having this cube hit this cube, and this is how you move those two cubes, and that's all written in the rules, and this is how you do it,
Yep.
and that's how it works. And you kind of can't step away from that too much. Like in the other game modes, we can do what we want in key operations. It can be crazy, um, but for like the base game, where I need to be able to go across the country and meet someone and play a game that I've never met this person. We need to have the rules be codified and everybody understands what's going on. You're kind of stuck. Like these are the rules of how missions work. And so finding things that in the mission can change how the game plays. Like it all has to be in the mission itself, if that makes sense. So like it has to be in the abilities that trigger when the shatter point shows up. It has to be in the thing that happens every other turn or at the end of every time you score. Whatever it is that you do in the mission, you need to like kind of bake it into the DNA of how the mission itself plays. So like sure, it's going to have an impact on different units and what's going to be good, but that's not usually the direction that we're thinking of it. We're not usually like, let's make a mission that's going to be good for stormtroopers. It's more like, let's make a mission that does something interesting, that focuses on something we haven't done yet, right? So like the first mission was very just like 9 points on the table, very even, very spaced, nothing crazy. And then we're like, okay, well, what if we make a big circle in the middle and kind of like bunch everything up, and people aren't going to be going to far corners of the table? And what if something happens when the shatter point's pulled? Cool. How does that change the game? What does that do? And it's less about like, how does this affect individual units? How does this change units? And it's more about, how does this change the way I think about the game? Because the way you think about the game is what's going to make you be like, oh, maybe these units are good. Maybe these units do this thing. And so rather than focus on like raising individual strengths and weaknesses of things that are maybe underperforming, et cetera, with mission design, it's very much more this like, what can we do that's different but still fits the formula? Like you still need to be able to play the game, score the game, win the game,
Yeah.
but what can we do with it? So like the most recent one where you can change the map on your opponent, like it's wild.
It,
It's
it
completely
is
different than anything else,
wild.
right? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it may not be everyone's favorite. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's very different. It's
Yeah.
very exciting. And there are different units that you want to play when you play that versus when you play, Sabotage Showdown or
Totally.
Never Tell Me the Odds, right? Like they're all different. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered the question here, but we're definitely looking at missions more from a like, how do we change the game? How do we change the feel of the game and the way that you need to look at it? And then whether or not that makes units better or worse kind of happens organically.
Let's turn to the balance patch, Plummer,
Yeah,
because this is what
let's hit
everyone's
it.
super excited about. Okay, so which of the change units was the most difficult to get right?
Oh, that's easy. Anakin Skywalker.
Oh yeah, okay, I
That
can
was
imagine.
a nightmare.
Yeah,
In a good
yeah,
way, in the best way possible. Anakin Skywalker is apparently a very popular character in Star Wars. Who knew?
shocker.
People love Anakin, right? And
Yeah,
the thing about Anakin Skywalker is like, Anakin Skywalker is the big hero, right? And everyone expects him to come in and win the day. And I think I've said this on like 3 or 4 podcasts now, but like, two things when Anakin Skywalker's in the story. Number one, he's going to save the day. And number
yeah,
two, he's not going to follow orders.
yeah,
And so that has to be front and center, that he is the big hero. One thing that when we were going into the update that we were really focused on was that we didn't want to change the heart of any of the characters. Like when we go in and we know like what this character is, like we get what's called a design brief, and it tells us like Anakin
mm,
Skywalker is the big hero who saves the day. He does
yep,
unconventional methods, and his soldiers love him for it. And like that's the design brief of who this character is and what they do. And there's more to it than that, but we wanted to make sure that we stayed true to that. And so Anakin had to feel like the big hero, like he was it has to feel like Anakin is, and the fact that Anakin is there and that Anakin won this fight is the reason that you won the battle. It couldn't have been Mace Windu winning the fight. It had to be Anakin winning the fight. So it's funny because you guys talk about, the benchmarks and the breakpoints, and like the number one piece of feedback we got on Anakin is he doesn't feel like a general because he doesn't move anyone else. He only moves himself, and we want him to move other clones. And we were like, all right, fine, just let him move a clone. Wow, nothing has ever broken anything more than letting Anakin like just move someone because at the start of his turn. And I don't know why, because like Anakin's good, but like I don't think he's outrageous or anything. But like when we did that, it was not okay. And all of a sudden, like we were just steamrolling things. We were like, what's happening here? I don't understand. So we took that away. We tried something else, and we got into I don't want to say heated discussions with playtesters, but like sometimes they weren't happy that things got taken away or that like we said like there was one point where we're like, well, he can't move anyone else. That's all there is to it. And they were like, no, he has to. And we're like, okay, fine. It was a big process, and it was good, right? It was a very good conversation. There was real back and forth, and like there was some passion in there on both sides, and that was great. And I think where we landed with him is really awesome and really, really fun. And I think like the biggest thing that came out of all of that is like the identity. The way that the identity changed on him, I think, is the biggest thing. Because, and this is something that we did across a lot of identity shifts, the identity has to feel like it's always giving you something. And so if the idea is that Anakin Skywalker is the big hero who comes in and saves the day, then on your turn, when Anakin Skywalker saves the day and wounds someone, you need to get something. And it needs to not matter who he wounds. He wounds someone, you get bacon. Like that's that we kind of said like, okay, this has to be the play pattern. When Anakin goes, he's going to go and he's going to go attack the nearest person. He's going to take them out and he's going to get something for it. And it's going to feel great. And that's where we fit in him moving other people. And because he has to earn it, because he has to go and get it, we get to give you more bacon. We get to say, you get to move everybody. You can move all your supports.
Crazy.
Like he's the general, and he went in and he struck someone down. And everyone's like, we can do it. We can win. Charge.
Yeah.
And that, number one, felt right. And number two, it wasn't free. So he had to earn it. So he gets to feel like the big hero. And then we're like, okay. So now, and that was great. It was a cool idea, but we're like, he's having trouble being the big hero. Oh, he needs a range attack. So we give him a range attack, and then we freed up his second attack a little bit, so that now you can do this thing where like you use the range attack and use the movement from the range attack to get yourself into position, and then you trigger the second attack and flip your stance into the stance you want to be in and attack the big guy. That feels very Anakin, being bombastic, using the Force, using all the tools that are available to him to put himself in the biggest position, to strike the killing blow, to save the day so that everyone can rush in. And now we have something that's exciting to do on the table, something that you have to work for and plan for, where you get to kind of like execute a strategy, and then you get this huge reward. And our hope is that that feels very good and is fun to do. We'll see.
He's gonna be freaking amazing. I think he's who everyone's most excited about. But.
Well, I'm glad, because it was not easy getting here, but it was well worth the effort.
Yeah, I'm super excited about him. He's always been one of my favorite units to put on the table, even though me as a very competitive focused player never brought him to a tournament before. But now I'm like, oh man, here's a unit who's one of my favorite to play on the table. Maybe I'll bring him to a tournament now. But that's just me, how I think of things. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's totally fine. It's interesting though, because like Anakin's one of those characters that you would still see him in top tables, and people were playing him sometimes because like they just like him that much. And that's great. So great. I hope that you do take him to a tournament. I hope you have a lot of fun with it, and you're standing here, so I hope you win. But at the end of the day, like someone's got to win, someone's got to lose, so it might as well be you.
Yeah. When we think about moving on to the most difficult, what one do you feel like you absolutely nailed in this rebalance?
Ooh, that's a loaded question on this one, because then if I think one thing and other people think something else, Aura Singh. I think Aura Singh is
good answer.
Is right kind of where we want her now. So she's dangerous. Like her tree didn't change much, but her expertise got a lot better. She's very, very consistent with those attacks. And it's really a choice of, do you want to reposition or do you want to take another attack with that great expertise and get some more damage in there, right? Yeah. And then on top of that, I think the defensive expertise shift, giving her the dash and the reposition, you kind of have this thing where like if you're going to shoot Aura Singh, you better not miss because you're not going
Oh
to get to
yeah.
shoot again because she's going to move and she's going to be out of
Yeah.
line of sight, right? And then of course on contract. So we were like, what can we do for Aura Singh that's gonna make her shine? That's gonna make her feel like she's worth 5 points because five's a lot, right? And then we came. I think it was me and Rutan were sitting around talking about payday and different abilities, and we're like, what if she could just pick a primary and grab a tag?
Yeah.
And it just makes her feel like the mercenary, like she's there to get paid and she'll do whatever you tell her. And that was it. That's what kind of like sunk it in for us. Like now she can fit in a lot more places. She's reliable. She's self-reliant.
Yeah.
So like she doesn't need you to give her the buff that she's taken the tag to get. It just makes her better or lets her move or just solidifies her dominance. But like on her own, you just put Aura Singh on the table and roll dice with her. She's going to do things.
Yeah. That's such a cool change. So, Plummer, with the update, what were the highest priorities that AMG had for it? Was it so obviously like with the core box, certain units stayed relevant, Maul, Clan Kreese, but like a lot of units kind of fell by the wayside as the game developed. Was the plan to breathe life back into those units, or were you more intending to, nope, we got to hit Iden and bring her and Dark Troopers down a notch? Like what was, was it more about updating the meta, more about making sure that like older product was still playable? Like what was your major aim?
So we had a very simple goal, and that goal was make the game better.
Okay.
And like that's kind of the goal in everything that we do.
Sure.
And that sounds flippant, but like that's always the goal, right? Like make the game better, make it more fun. What does that mean? I don't know. Great, we'll figure it out together. But the goal is always that like everything that you're doing, everything that you're touching should make the game better, not necessarily make it more complex and not like take away options. We're not looking to shake up a meta just because like there's always going to be something that is the best.
Yes.
It's allowed to be the best. We don't need to make something else the best because then that thing is just the best and it will get to be the best for a while until we need to change it again. You just end up in this, it's kind of a mess at some point. So our goal was really just like, make it better. What isn't working? What is frustrating to play against or creates negative experiences for people? Like I say this a lot, like every game has a winner and a loser, so it might as well be me. And that goes both ways. Like I want to be able to lose a game and still have fun playing it. And sometimes there are things that are so out of balance or just a little overpushed or for whatever reason, when you lose against them, it feels bad. And it's hard to quantify what that means. There's not necessarily like a checklist that you can go down and say like, oh, it feels good to lose against this because X, Y, and Z. It's a very visceral, like tummy feels thing. And we wanted to eliminate those from the game and also like, I guess, breathe new life into stuff that had kind of fallen by the wayside. Because at the end of the day, we are better at it now than we were when we started. Who knew?
Sure.
Like if you bake 100 pies, your 100th pie is better than your first pie. Surprise. So over the course of years, we have gotten number one better, but number two, like the way we make units has changed because we have realized a little bit more like how far we can push that envelope. When you're making early day stuff, you're very careful because you don't want to have something that's going to blow everything out and destroy your carefully managed ecosystem. And then once it's kind of been going for a little while, like you can throw something crazy in there and try something and push it. And like also like once your playtesters have kind of like an established knowledge of the game, because obviously there's a period when you're making a game where your playtest pool is very small because you can't tell a whole bunch of external testers about something because you got to keep it kind of under wraps. So then like you announce the game and then you get this big new pool of playtesters because the world knows the game exists, so you can bring more people into the fold. And then there's like a little learning period while they're learning how to play the game, right? But once that all gets established and like everyone in the playtest sphere is speaking with the same vocabulary, so to speak, and like is playing the same game, if that makes sense. We've played this game for 3 months and like we know what everything means. Then you can start trying crazy stuff. Like that's when you get to do things like, what if the armorer said that you don't increase the force cost on your stuff? Like, that's insane. Let's try it. and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes something's way too good and you have to pull it back. And we also, like, as a rule, our development philosophy is kind of that when we put something into playtest for the first time, we try and like knock it out of the park and make it crazy, because we think it's a little bit easier to pull something back and say like, okay, that's
Yeah.
too much. Let's reel that in a little bit, rather than to like try and push something forward and say like, okay, you're not doing enough. Try and do
Yeah.
something. Because like when you get down to the wire, if you push something too hard, you make something crazy. If you pull it back too far, then it's just not as good, and
Yeah.
one is way worse than the other.
For sure.
So yeah, we definitely wanted to like breathe new life into stuff that people hadn't been playing for a while, make the game better, and the game is better when you can use more of your miniatures. Like, full stop.
100%.
If you can use more of the miniatures that you own and have a fun time and feel like you have a chance at winning and that you're going to have a blast no matter what you put on the table, the game is better. And so that was the goal.
Yeah.
And also as few touches as possible, right? Like,
Mm.
just change
Yeah.
what needs to change. Don't change
Yeah.
what doesn't need to change. And maybe we got away from that a little bit. There's a lot of units that changed in here, but we did try to keep the touches small where we could. But sometimes you got to do more.
Well, that leads right into our next question, which has to do with some of the units that weren't changed. There's been discussion about units like Padme and Woosh and Delmico who were untouched. What
Yep.
led to some of those characters not being updated in this balance patch?
I mean, so number one, they weren't at the top of the list, right?
Yeah.
So like when we were going through the things that we felt needed to change or needed to be updated, they weren't at the very tip top of the list. Or maybe we considered that maybe some of the other changes that we're making might make it so that these still have a little more life. And there's a bandwidth question at the end of
Sure.
the day. Like,
Yeah.
I could tell you for sure that we added at least 10 units to this that were not in it originally. That like when we came here and we were like, we're going to do these units, this is it, no more additions. The number of times during this process that I said, okay, but that's it, no more additions, it was a lot. It was a lot of times in which I said like, okay, we have to stop. We have to stop adding things. No, we can't change it. And eventually we really had to say like, okay, this is it. We don't have time to test anything else. We don't have time to change anything else. We can't do anything more. We got to stop. And so are there things that maybe could have been touched? Absolutely. Like we could have gone through and redone everything, but we didn't have the time. So in the future, if we come back and do this again, when we come back and do this again, like those things might get looked at, or maybe something else comes out that makes them better. So it's not that like we don't like those units or we don't realize that people aren't playing them or this or that, but there is a reality that we only have so many hours and we only have so much time, and you have to focus on what is the most crippling. And especially right after the update comes out and everything that was quote bad is now exciting and new.
Yeah.
The other things that were quote bad that people don't like, and I'm only saying quote because it makes me feel better about myself. If you look at those things now in light of all these updates, your brain goes crazy with the what might have been. And I think that makes it a little worse. And especially if that's your favorite character. If your favorite scene is Leia as Boosh, there is nothing that is going to console you from the fact that Boosh didn't get updated. And I'm sorry. If that is the case, I am very sorry. But there's a reality of time and bandwidth, and hopefully we'll catch anything we missed the next time.
Yeah, I assume that also answers why, like, Kanan and Iden are two of the best primaries in the game, and they weren't touched. And I assume that there is a combination of bandwidth issues. Also, like, Iden's squad was nerfed, and so it might be that, like, Iden herself didn't get touched, but, like, let's see if the change to Haskin ISFs is enough, right?
There's a lot of that, and there's also a lot of, like, if you look across the updates, we did not really down-tune many primaries. I guess you could say that Vader got down-tuned because he got the tag restrictions on his identity, but that's not a huge down-tune. That's not like reducing dice or anything crazy. We didn't want to touch primaries too much because primaries are such an exciting part of the game. And if a primary does a lot, that's probably fine. And so we focused on the other pieces that were issues specifically because we think that the primaries doing exciting and fun, interesting things is great and is what the game is about. And, maybe there are some that could use some trims, but we felt more like pushing up the ones that we wanted to use our bandwidth rather to take primary units that people are not having fun playing and make them more fun to play than to change things that people are having a great time with, and that we don't necessarily like. If we thought something was like breaking the game, we would have changed it. Like if we
Yeah.
thought it was a huge problem, we would have fixed it. But there are reasons for all the things that we didn't touch.
Yeah, I didn't realize until you just said that primaries were largely not there. No primaries were nerfed with the exception of Vader's tag restriction, which is a really interesting thing. It's going to kind of inform how I think about your design going forward. But good point.
Kind of so jumping to talking away from primaries back to secondaries and supports. Do you follow any design rules tied to point costs? For like, is there like a certain amount of like, hey, this character is 3 points, so they can't get diceless displacement, or they can only move so many figures as a 4-cost unit?
So this is like the best worst answer. So yes, those rules exist, and they exist solely to be broken.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, yeah, we know that, you can't have a 3-point secondary running around with force push. Like that is terrifying, right? Especially if you like pair that with a Han and Chewie 5-cost, like running around with your 8-cost primary, like that would be terrifying, and we shouldn't do that until we do. So like we have these rules and these ideas of like, what does a 5-cost look like? What does a 4-cost? What does a 3-cost look like? What can they do? What can't they do? And the interesting thing about those rules is that they apply 90% of the time, and then the 10% of the time where we get to say, except for here. And then we need to figure out, how do you balance that? Like, what's the downside? I always say, what's the cost? And I imagine that the other developers that work with me get sick of hearing me ask, well, what does it cost? Because nothing can really be free, right? Like there's got to be an opportunity cost, or it's got to be like, they can do this because they can't do XYZ. And maybe you don't always pay the cost like during the game, or even realize that it's there, but it is there. Like they have 3 less hit points because they can do this thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the cost. So yeah. They exist, but they're not. They're very amorphous.
Yeah, it's just like your Plummer and his baking. He's all he's doing is baking cookies.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Which units, Plummer, have surprised you the most in the competitive play since they were released?
It's the opposite of the Asajj question. I don't think I've really had a whole lot of surprises about like what's done well competitively and what I thought people were going to play. Maybe Kanan. I think it's. I mean, obviously Kanan's a good character. I didn't necessarily expect that people would be willing to deal with the restrictions of playing so many Spectres to like make it work. That Kanan would be as effective as he often is. But that's definitely been happening, and that's cool, and that's great. And I guess the flip side of that is like, Hera surprises me a little, because I really like Hera and I think she's really interesting, and I don't see her as much as I thought I would.
I'm Hera's biggest stan, Plummer. So
we can fight about that one someday. So probably Kanan if I had to say, but mostly because I just didn't. Kanan is very strong, but Kanan is also very restricted if you want him, if you want to get the most out of him. And I wasn't necessarily ready for like how many people would like say like, okay, well, this is good enough that I'm just going to do that.
Yeah. Jumping a little bit back into the patch, how long ago were these changes locked in? And did any of those updates? Well, I'll start with that.
We finished these. We finished these a minute ago. I don't remember exactly when, but it's definitely been a few months. They were done before the holidays.
Okay.
Like we locked them before Christmas time.
Okay. So then, did any of these unit updates impact any of the figures that were already released?
How do you mean? Like has it informed our decisions about other things that we've made since? I don't think so. I think our timeline is so long. It takes us like, we make something, it comes out like 2 years later. So
that's what I was kind of asking about, like the timeline here.
The nice thing about these kind of updates is that we don't have to wait for a miniature to be sculpted, and we don't have to wait for like all of the other steps to happen. We just say like, okay, we're going to change these things, and then it takes us time to do it, and then it takes graphic design time to like make the changes to the cards and everything, and then it has to go through legal and licensing and this and that and everything, and then we need to like plan the time for it to go, and like there's all the stuff that comes behind it, but it's not the same as like, this is a product plan for 2 years from now, go. So these are definitely like these changes are more kind of ad hoc, but the nice thing is because our timeline is so long, it means that we've already finished the things that are coming for the next while. So that means that these changes are made with that in mind, meaning that they're
Yeah.
not going to get undone by something that we hadn't thought about.
That tracks.
So like these kind of stand now in line with what's coming.
That brings up the next question, which is, so we think about like buffing by addition. So I think the perfect example of this is armor. Armor is released and instantly all Mandos just get way better, right? Is AMG, is that something you're thinking about with, I don't want to like think about it with like broad categories of units like Republic or something, but is that something like Dathomirians would be an example where AMG, where you guys are thinking, we want to make Dathomirians better, but we're not going to update them like in a balance patch. Instead, we're going to release something in the future that will make them better. I guess the Morgan Elsbeth has been announced, right? Like, is that something that like is, are you always thinking about that for kind of these sub factions, or what's the process there?
Kind of try and make sure that things stand on their own, like
Okay.
especially with like a unit box. Like when you go out and you buy your squad pack, you know, like you should be able to put those miniatures on the table together and have them do a thing, and you should be able to play that and have a good time.
Yeah.
So when we plan the next one, we're always going to look and say like we need to make this box of miniatures work standalone, and that's always priority number one. Priority number one is that if I buy this box of miniatures and I put them together and I paint them and I put them on the table, I'm going to have fun. It's going to do something. Great.
Yeah.
As long as we meet that, excellent. And then from there, we can also say like, okay, well, we're making this thing. Let's look back. What else exists? What would it be cool with? Would it be cool if this worked well with like Republic Clone Commandos? Would it be cool if this worked, if this did something with like Night Sister Acolytes because they haven't seen anything in a while?
Yeah.
And if we can fit those things in, we do. But the number one priority is to make sure that this all works together. And then we try and like find ways that the other things are going to fit in. And also like sometimes we're just thinking about like a theme. So like you talk about Morgan Elspeth, like Morgan Elspeth has a lot of Dathomirian stuff around the character, so naturally we're going to think about Dathomirian stuff when we're making her. So like sometimes things goes hand in hand, but I wouldn't say that we necessarily like we will plan a new product to make that old thing better. We'll just get it in the unit update.
Yeah, it's just and it's providential when it lines up to be like, oh, Morgan Elsbeth is going to make Dathos better, right?
Yeah,
and
like it's great. It's great if we can find something that we can fit in, like make sure that this old stuff meshes in really neatly with the new stuff, and we can usually find a way to do that. But it's not necessarily like a specific targeted thing where we're going to like plan a whole new thing to make that old thing better. It's better to just make the adjustment to the old thing without having to plan something new around it.
That tracks.
All right, we're almost out of time with you, Plummer. We just have a couple more questions before.
That's fine. I'm happy to hang out.
Don't say that. Don't say that, Plummer. We'll have you here all night.
I mean, you did say a couple questions first, so I think we're okay.
Good. There you go. That's right. Sam, why'd you say that?
Yeah. So, just a personal wish list for you. Is there a character from any corner of Star Wars lore that would be like your dream to design and bring to the game?
Dr. Aphra.
Oh, that's a great answer.
I like that choice.
Yep, Dr. Aphra for sure. That would be awesome. Like I love all of them.
Yeah.
Her homicidal droids. That would be it.
000 and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic answer. Plummer, did you ever play Imperial Assault? Do you know about Imperial Assault?
I've heard of it, but I can't say that I played a ton of it.
Okay, because the homicidal droids were released in that game, and it was so much fun playing with them.
And I've heard a lot of great stories of people having a blast playing those.
Yeah. Dr. Aphra, I would never have guessed that would be your answer, and that is a fantastic response. So, all right, make it happen, Plummer. We'll be waiting for it. Okay, last question. Is there a plan? Obviously, I know you cannot be precise or definite with respect to this, but is there a general plan for how often balance updates are going to be releasing for Shatterpoint?
This is an answer that everyone's going to hate hearing. As needed. So we don't have like a planned cadence. Like we don't want to commit to say like we're going to do this once a year, every year. We're going to do this every 6 months. But like the thing about that is that it works both ways, right? So like it means that we're not definitely going to do this in a year, but if in 3 months we're like, oh, we really need to update something, we're going to do it. So I would say like this is not the last update you'll see. Like we're gonna keep working on the game and making sure that it's good, but we're not gonna say like we're gonna do this every year on the dot, on the
Okay.
nose. But we are going to be continuing to like keep a watch on the game, keep a watch on how people are playing, what they're playing, what is happening with the game. And we always want to, as Schick says, tend the garden, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you got to go in and pull out some weeds, got to go in there and plant some new plants. We are going to keep doing that. We're just not ready to commit to a timeline.
That's fair. I mean, I would not expect you to commit to a timeline, but I think the as needed that's kind of what we need to hear, because you don't, I think that the competitive players maybe have a tendency to say like, we need this to be addressed. We need it to be addressed now. And it's really hard to step back and say, that's not, I mean, for one, it's not really feasible. Like you guys have jobs that are not just like make competitive players happy. Right. And it's like, the question is it breaking the game? Does it need to be fixed, and does it need to be fixed right now, or can it be a part of like this kind of natural growth process?
It's hard, right? Because like I applaud the passion, right? Like when people get very, very heated or passionate about like they need a fix and it needs to happen right now, like that very
Yeah.
much means that you love this game, you care about it a lot, and you've invested a lot in it. And I think that's awesome, and thank you. But at the end of the day, like again, it's a bandwidth question. We only have so much. Like if we stop to fix a thing, anything, it means that we can't be working on anything else. Like our time is dedicated to that problem. And sometimes that is the best choice. And sometimes it is the right choice for us to like throw all of our active resource at fixing XYZ problem. And then other times it's better to wait it out, make sure that the problem is a problem, stays a problem, and then kind of like think through what the solution is going to be, because there's a difference between the solutions that come from we need to fix this now and the solutions that come from, oh, this has been an ongoing problem, what are some ways that we could solve this? And like when you take your time with the solution, there's more room for nuance because you can test more things and you can try more things. And when it's a fix that needs to happen right now, and those do exist, those have happened in our games, you fix it in a very different way. You fix it in a very immediate and definitive way. And I'm not always convinced it's the best way that things get fixed, but when something has to get fixed, you have to fix it, and there's not an option. So it's a, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like if we fix it fast, that's great because people can get on with like their competitive games and their leagues and like what they're doing, and that's awesome. But taking the time to make sure that we carefully consider how we want to fix problems that are not actual game-breaking issues often yields a better result and a more nuanced result that's not going to cause more problems down the line.
Yeah, I think we appreciate that. All right, well, Plummer, we want to thank you so much for coming on. We have taken an hour of your time, and it has been awesome. We want to especially thank you for the work that you do on this game that we love. I mean, Shatterpoint's, it's a fantastic game. You guys absolutely nailed the balance patch, and I mean, we know.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you again, Plummer. I've loved having you on here. I love hearing about game design generally, and I especially love hearing about game design for my personal favorite game. So it's been a pleasure to have you. So
well, thank you guys for having me. It was awesome being on the show. It was really fun to sit here and talk about Shatterpoint for a while. And if you don't mind, I just want to say thanks to everyone out there listening. Thank you for playing Shatterpoint. Thanks for having fun with it. I hope you enjoy the balance update and all of the work that we've put into it. I can't wait to. I think it's going to be like next Monday when everyone's had a weekend where they could like go play games with their friends. I can't wait to read through all the Discords and the Facebooks on like Monday morning when people are talking about the games they played over the weekend. I think that's going to be a pretty big highlight. So thank you to everyone that's listening. Thank you for playing. Maybe I might be in there. Who knows?
Who knows? Everyone say nice things about Schick or about Plummer on the Slack, because
you can say nice things about Schick too. He's a great guy.
Don't say nice things about him. Him and Amon, we attack viciously. Just kidding. We love them too.
Cheers.
Awesome. All right. Well, we want to thank Plummer again for coming on. We want to thank everyone for listening. We encourage you to rate and review the podcast, play some games, post on the Slack or Discord about the awesome list that you've been brewing. Thanks, everyone.